Good evening. Welcome to our regularly scheduled meeting of February 17th, 2015. Deputy Mayor, if you could lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dolores?
Counselor Hammond.
Here.
Counselor Hurley is unable to be here tonight. Counselor Cochran.
Here.
Counselor Newsos.
Here.
Counselor Martino.
Here.
Counselor Rell.
Here.
Counselor Roberts is unable to attend. Deputy Mayor Berry
Here.
and Mayor Montanari.
Here. Thank you, Dolores. We have no hearings this evening, so we'll move right into public comment. Anybody wishing to speak this evening? Gus?
Good evening. Gus Colantonio, 16 Morrison Avenue. Here we go again for the new year. The police department has stated that Morrison Avenue does not warrant a stop sign because there is not enough traffic on the street. Yet, the traffic report shows that on an average day, Morrison Avenue has twice as many cars as Hillcrest Avenue. Twice as many. Tonight, I would like to ask again, what is the town justification for not addressing the safety concern on Morrison Avenue? I have asked the same question on many occasions, and as long as I do not get a logical answer, I will be asking again the same question in the future. Again, let me state some facts, and by any means, you don't have to tell me tonight, but sometimes, if whatever I'm saying it's wrong, let me know. I've pointed out on many occasions that the traffic on Hillcrest Avenue is half the traffic than on Morrison Avenue, and yet has two stop signs at Orchard Street intersection. I'm not aware of any reason for the stop signs on Hillcrest Avenue, even though the road meets all the town standards. I've also pointed out that originally Morrison Avenue was never meant to, by the developer of the road, to connect to Silas Dean. For unknown reason, Morrison Avenue was connected to Silas Dean Highway around 1955. And at that time, before then, we did not have any through traffic. I've also pointed out that the intersectional side distance from Tifton and Morrison Avenue measured by the town is 232 feet. This distance is only good for 24 miles per hour. Most of the traffic goes at a speed of 31 miles per hour. 15% of the traffic goes faster than 31. The posted speed is 25. If an accident happens at this location due to a substandard intersection side distance, can the town defend the situation? I don't think so, especially after I said it so many times. And as far as I know, I'm still paying taxes. I don't know why. Between Tifton Road and Orchard Street, Morrison Avenue has no separation between the sidewalk and the road on the south side, and only 2 feet separation between the sidewalk and the road to the north. And by the way, this is the narrowest part of Morrison Avenue now, and with all this snow, there is not enough room for 2 cars, one going by in each direction. I've also reported to the town that on a normal school day, there are over 45 students attending Silas Dean Middle School that cross Morrison Avenue at the most unsafe location of the street. For comparison and reason, the intersection side distance for Orchard at Hillcrest is 344 feet to the east and 970 feet to the west, with 2 stop signs on this location. The intersection side distance on Orchard and Morrison Avenue looking east is 290 feet, with 1 stop sign in the westerly direction. Town personnel has taken all the measurement at this intersection, has wasted time and money, has proven that we have here is a very consistent with good engineering principle, and yet refuses to address the problem. Why spend the time to take these measurements knowing all along you were not going to do anything anyway? Why? The stop sign on Hillcrest Avenue and the lack of a stop sign on Morrison Avenue in the easterly direction is the reason why the average daily traffic on Morrison Avenue is double than the average daily traffic on Hillcrest Avenue. Here we go. I'm going to ask, how long is it going to take to rectify a problem of inequality that has existed for many years? Do you have any sense of responsibility and fairness for all the residents and stop making decisions based on personal preferences? Do we have two-stop sign on Hillcrest Avenue because there is a policeman living close by? I'm asking the question. It's for you to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Gus. Yes.
Good evening. I'm Sheila Wells, 336 Hartford Avenue. I'm here as a Wethersfield representative to the Metropolitan District Commission's Citizen Advisory Committee to advise the council and the citizens of Wethersfield that there's a public hearing scheduled next Tuesday, February 24th at 6 p.m. at the Silas Middle School. The purpose of the hearing is to address the proposed changes that the MDC is making in the long-term control plan, which is part of the Clean Water Project. The purpose of the long-term control plan is to reduce combined sewage overflows, or CSOs, into the area waters, and particularly to eliminate them in the North Branch of the Park River into the Wethersfield Cove. There have been a number of improvements made in the sewer system over the last eight years or so, and the MDC was going to go into what they've done so far. But the proposed change is to curtail some of the separation of the sanitary sewers in the south end of Hartford. And instead, their plan is to build a much bigger tunnel, an 18-diameter tunnel in the bedrock 200 feet below the Hartford, going out toward West Hartford from the South Meadows toward West Hartford, and also which will hold much of the combined sewage overflows during the storms, and then pump it out to the plant. And they're proposing to increase the daily capacity of the plant as well. So that's their the major changes. The good news, as far as Wethersfield is concerned, I was here last year to talk about the hearing they were scheduling last year. The DEP pulled back the plan to reconsider it, and it's come back, and they're going to be more protective of the cove. Instead of protecting it from an 18 to 30-year storm, they're proposing eliminating any CS outflows at all in the cove. Though where the plan is scheduled, it wouldn't happen until 2023, but it is scheduled to take place. And I think if anyone's seen all the recreation that's been going on in the cove this winter, it's been wonderful. We've got ice fishermen and skaters and skiers and snowshoers, and we're having a tournament this Saturday. It's been kind of cool. Funding for the plan was approved by voters in 2006 and then again in a referendum in 2012. I encourage everyone to pay attention to the plan because we're paying for this, for all these improvements in our sewer system, in our water bill, and in the ad valorem tax, in our taxes, through an ad valorem tax the town pays to the Metropolitan District Commission. The costs are projected to continue to increase at least for 10 years. One of the things the MDC is saying is that with these changes in the plan, there will be some cost savings. It won't be as much of an increase. I think that's to be seen. But I think it's important to come and pay attention and make sure that the MDC are good stewards of our funds as well as stewards of the environment. The long-term control plan is posted on the MDC website if you want to go look at it. At the hearing, there'll be an opportunity for public comment. You can submit a written statement before or after the hearing, and the governing statute and the DEP will require the MDC to answer any questions you have in writing to the plan, I guess it's a plan. They have to submit to the DEP after the hearing. And again, the hearing date is February 24th, 6 o'clock. Snow date is March 12th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that update, too, and that thorough presentation. Anyone else wishing to speak? Hop Young.
Good evening, Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. I couldn't help but notice the articles, more than one, regarding the good news that tops our report here in Wethersfield and how everything here is going along very good or well. Of course, I don't believe that. But if you think about an $84 million reconstruction of Wethersfield High School as being something that's good for the community, I don't believe that for a moment, Mayor. You had some repairs that you had to do, but you decided to do a whole reconstruction of the damn building and cost $84 million. I think that's a big disgrace to everybody in town, or at least the taxpayers that are concerned about money. I believe that more is on the horizon for problems. And you know, we're going to see those tax bills cranking up now with this high school, all that borrowed money that it's going to take to do that school. And we're going to see our tax bills go up. But you don't mention any of that here. Of course, our Hartford delegation does talk about the hard times that are coming. And it appears that, you know, you guys weren't even aware that this was happening when I read this. And, you know, the delegation, at least one of them went over to another town too and talked about the same issues and letting the councils know that it's going to be tough. And I don't know what your plans are, but you've been taxing us up and up and up over the years. I think it's time, long overdue, to take taxes and reduce them. Cut services. I've been talking about this for a long time. You know, after all, our grand list hasn't increased by very much, 0.26%. I mean, that's a drop in the bucket. If it wasn't for a few companies that came here and you took their assets or their grand list portion out, we would be in the deficit hole. I mean, our real estate, our personal property, it doesn't match. It's in poor shape. And try to sell a house in this town. It gets worse and worse. I must admit, there are some people who are doing very well. You know, we could think about Kathy Malloy, we could think about Leslie Larson, we can go right down the list, Donald Williams and Mary Glassman, who got a nice new job. I mean, you know, all these political people are well taken care of. And it's expensive on the rest of us. And then, of course, we have Mr. Doyle, who keeps talking about hoarding, people who are hoarders, and what in the world is he talking about that for? He should be concentrating on the budget and all the problems we have here. And but obviously, it's just a diversion. And then, of course, we have more subsidies that we're looking at for baseball fields up in Hartford that we're going to subsidize. That's going to be a real fact. We have people who are voting for it who we don't get to vote for or vote against, and they're the ones who are going to pull the punch, and we're going to end up funding or help funding a lot of their business that they want to do up in Hartford. I noticed that the town of Canton, town steers clear of state aid. I think, you know, the state aid is costly to us. And maybe we should think about that as well. Maybe sometimes it just doesn't pay to take state aid. And of course the state aid, and a great deal of it is all borrowed. When I talk about all that borrowed money, I'm blaming you guys too, because you keep asking for more borrowed money. It's not like it's surplus sitting up there and they're going to hand it out to you. It's all borrowed. And somebody is going to have to pay for it. Maybe not me, and maybe not some older people sitting up here, but the younger ones are going to have to end up paying for it. And, you know, I'm sure that they're thanking you every day for the great job that you've done providing them with all these niceties. But they'll end up paying for it eventually, because who's going to make the payments? There's not enough money to go around. And then, of course, we got the magnet schools that want more money. We have everybody's on the bandwagon right now up at the state capitol for more money, and the towns are going to end up getting the short end of the stick. And I think we need to be prepared for that. And again, it requires reducing our spending, something that you folks have never done before. It's always spend, spend, spend. And the taxpayer ends up getting hit on the chin constantly. So I hope that in this budget process, you know, you got to come up with some ways of reducing. Otherwise, we're going to just be in bigger and bigger trouble. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Mr. Rule.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. George A. Rue, 956 Cloverdale Circle. It isn't that I don't think of you people often. I often wish I could come, but my life gets kind of busy. So from time to time, I say, I'm going to go, and fortunately, you got it tonight vis-a-vis last night, which I couldn't have come. But anyway, a couple of things I'd like to share with you. First of all, our pond has made some real progress. I think Tony Martino and a couple of other gentlemen on the council, and I presume all of the council, were encouraging making some progress. The reaction to my neighbors has been very positive. It looks a lot better. Right now, it almost looks beautiful. It does look beautiful. But the cost, I know that Jeff is facing making all that snow disappear, but that contributes to the beauty. My thoughts on that are, I hope, it is my fond hope, that after many, many years of just doing nothing, we've seen a step forward. And maybe Tony's pushing, he seems to be, and I'm happy that he is, to get that project done. Do the weir, bring it back so that it is a benefit to the community vis-a-vis an eyesore. Another item I'll just share with you, as I look at this council, I can only see two people, maybe three, who can remember the 6 old guys that used to sit up here in the front row from the Wethersfield Taxpayers Association. You remember, we were here at every single meeting, at board meetings, always raising hell, and I'm sure there were times where this council said, God, I wish those old guys would go away. Well, they have. Of all of those that were here on a regular basis, other than one who moved out of town, they're all dead. Except Bob Young, myself, and Ed Cardis. So, in terms of the energies that are required to come down and motivate our council and our elected officials, the mind may be willing in a number of cases, but oftentimes the body and the bones aren't. As my little great-grandson said to Helga recently, she says, I want to go to the I Need Help playground. That's up at Highcrest School. And he had to exercise because my bones hurt. We thought it was great. But what I want to share with you is the Taxpayers Association, that was mainly Bob Young and myself, some time back, decided that the monies that we have, and we still have a little bit of a treasury, and when Bob is the treasurer, and I think we probably still have a number that says we're an official organization. We still do. I could come up here and say, I'm the president and he's the treasurer, but in any event. We decided that when Baloo Tucker died, and Baloo Tucker was one of those guys that sat here. He was very different than Bob and myself. He was quiet and soft, but he had a lot to say. And at the time of his death, I don't know, I couldn't come down to the town council and suggest an action on the part of the council to give some recognition to a citizen who put a lot of his life into this town. So what we had talked about was taking some of our treasury, a small part of it, and making a contribution to something. And I think Bob, we had talked about a number of things, and Bob Young, he kind of picked one, and I had to agree with it completely. With our discussion, he made a contribution from the taxpayers' treasury to the Wounded Warrior Project. The Wounded Warrior Project. And let me just read a couple of statements from the letter, the thank you note that Bob got and he shared with me. Dear caring friend, and it was addressed to the Taxpayers Association, Bob Young, treasurer. In this time of war, few things are more vital than reaching out to America's wounded service members as you did with your generous gift of $100 in memory of Baloo Tucker. It's a modest gift, but we have a modest treasury. For these troops, many of them young adults, your patriotic kindness means a hand up as they begin new lives after severe injuries and trauma. As a partner in the Wounded Warrior Project mission to honor and empower wounded warriors, you help these men and women move back into the mainstream of the great American life they protected for you and for me. As soon as wounded warriors leave the war zone and arrive at the hospital, you're at their bedside hand in hand with wounded warrior. Through a broad spectrum of WWP programs, you stay with the wounded throughout the recovery. Many people use the phrase, support the troops. I'd like to make a further comment on that, support the troops. But you put these words into action by helping combat injured veterans as they work to build new lives. Imagine a warrior who sacrificed limbs or sight in Iraq or Afghanistan or Vietnam or World War II. Now skiing down, well, none of us from World War II were skiing down any mountainsides, to just interject a bit of humor, but some of the younger men of the latter wars sure wouldn't be missing that. Starting college, helping a fellow warrior, or beginning a new job. These images come to mind when I reflect on the power of your recent gift to the Wounded Warrior Project. And he thanks us profusely and so forth and so on. Baloo Tooker, he spent a lot of time in the service. He was in the Coast Guard, and he was in for 5 years. That's a long time to be in a war. I mean, even, that's just a long time to be out of your life. So I felt when I got this that I wanted to really share that with our council. Okay? But that's the plus side. The other side of the coin is, in today's paper, there was a very interesting article by David Brooks. He's a commentator or a writer who I have high regard for. He really puts it on the line and he says it very succinctly and very well. And he talks about, and this letter, or the article brought to mind the letter, and they kind of hooked together with it in my own mind. He talks about soldiers coming back wounded. He talks about traumatic stress and all of the problems that soldiers face, combat soldiers face. And he's very definite. He speaks about guys that were in combat. Okay? Guys that really put it on the line. There's a lot of veterans, they never left any place. But a lot of them didn't, and a lot of them didn't come back. Well, anyway, the things that caught my mind or caught my attention was one paragraph that I'd like to read to you, or two paragraphs. They're very short. And this person alludes to this over here, and I didn't highlight it, so I don't remember if I commented on it. But anyway, I'll read one. People generally, they talk about post-traumatic stress. People generally don't suffer high rates of PTSD after natural disasters. Instead, people suffer from PTSD after moral atrocities. Soldiers who've endured the depraved world of combat experience their own symptoms. Trauma is an expulsive cataclysm of the soul. And then it goes on and talks about a few other things, but this other paragraph really hit me, caught my attention. And it was written by a professor at Georgetown University. He emphasizes that most of the work will have to be done at the micro level. This is dealing with soldiers who are suffering from post-traumatic stress. And at the micro level we're at the micro level. When we talk to you, or when I talk to other members of the community about what soldiers have done and sacrificed in combat during a war, that's the micro level, at least as I understood it. And it goes on to say, through individual conversations between veterans and civilians that go on beyond the cheap grace of thank you for your service. Cheap grace, thank you for your service. Every time someone says that to me, because they happen to see I've got a combat infantry badge on, it kind of turns my stomach. And I just recently spoke to a young man in a very soft way, expressing, you don't need to thank me. But this caught my words. These caught my words. The conversations have to deal with the individual facts of each case. The goal is to get veterans to adopt the stance of friendly observer, to make clear how limited choices are when one is caught in a random tragic situation, namely war and combat. All right? Enough said. Why do I bring this up today? What dragged me out here tonight? is we're approaching the Memorial Day Parade circumstance or meetings on this. And you've known, and for any one of a number of years, I have not been particularly enthusiastic about the tone of the parade. We remember all veterans. We honor all veterans. We have political parties prancing down the streets. And I would just like to encourage any of you that are involved in this Memorial Day parade, which will be coming up, or celebration, or call it what you may, that you bring it back, or try to bring it back to where really its real meaning lies in honoring all those young men who never made it back. Never made it back. So with that said, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice being here. I miss it, but life sometimes has other challenges that have to be confronted with and faced. I will give you a copy of this letter. Is that all right, Bob? Here we go. And you put that in your record, okay? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, George. Anyone else wishing to speak this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to council reports. Any council reports this evening? Tony?
First of all, the Capital Improvement Committee has been meeting, and they've finished up the review of all the Department of Board of Ed requests and have developed a list of projects to be considered for the fiscal year 2015-2016 budget. Town staff is now preparing a list for submission to Planning and Zoning for the rate 24 referral, which will come to us later. EDIC Committee has met and reviewed the EDIC budget for submittal for 2015-2016. Peter Gillespie reviewed and updated vacant property updates for us. Stores are being filled, and the marketing subcommittee continues to work on Wethersfield webpage. There's a lot more details, but Peter is here tonight to make a report, so I'm sure most of that will be covered in his speech, so I won't go further with that one. The Senior Citizens Advisory Committee has met, and they're continuing to plan their spring fair, which will be held on May 21st at the Community Center. And the Wethersfield Advisory Commission for People with Disabilities had a meeting. For the first time, they had a quorum there in a while. There are currently a bunch of vacancies on the committee, and the members requested the commission be cut back from 15 to 10 members so that they could have a quorum at their meetings. I've given a request to the town clerk to consider submitting a resolution to council similar to what we had done for Youth Advisory Commission to reduce that group as well. There is currently a vacancy for a Board of Ed liaison, and I talked to the superintendent on that, and he's going to assign somebody because at their last meeting, the group wanted to discuss the Challenger program, but there was no board member there to provide input, so Mr. Emmett has told us that he will be providing somebody to us and getting that name to Dolores.
Thank you, Tony. Other council reports? Donna?
Attended the Conservation Commission meeting last week, but we didn't have a quorum, but there was pretty good discussion and some questions that were asked of me, which I submitted to the town manager in my notes. And then I did attend the, because I think our meeting was canceled. The last meeting was canceled because of the weather, and we had that meeting in regards to the Church and Main intersection on the 29th. And it was a pretty good turnout from the community. It was nice to see that many people here. The presentation was good. People asked good questions, and I think were satisfied with the responses that they got. So it was a good meeting.
Thank you. Thanks for attending too, Donna. Other council reports? Council comments? Any council comments? Jeff?
Just want to thank our Public Works employees for all the hours they're spending keeping our roads clear. It's certainly not been an easy winter. It started off as a very easy winter, and certainly the last 3 or 4 weeks have been incredibly challenging. So I know they've been working long hours and they're exhausted, but we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. Other comments? I want to just follow up, echo that, of course, but I think most of our residents are aware that, like all the member towns in the area, really throughout New England, including all the major cities up north, we have experienced the last 3.5 weeks a tremendous amount of storm activity, the need for quite a bit of snow removal, road clearing, and I think most of our residents would agree that our town staff, along with the contractors, have done a terrific job keeping the roads open under very adverse conditions and traveling around town, or if you've even gone to neighboring towns. I think we've led the way in terms of the quality of the road clearing, road treatment. I think we've really done a terrific job, and probably better than many towns in the area. I will say that many of our guys have had to put in overtime. We had to take a break, I think, last week for a day because of, I think, state regulations with regarding to number of hours guys could work without a break. Put them right back in. We've got a lot of volunteers that serve in other roles in town, so, you know, expressing those thanks to people. No surprise, many of our residents have themselves spent a lot of time keeping their driveways and sidewalks clear, entrances to their driveways, making access at intersections, and that has been difficult for sure. Many of our seniors who may not have some of the resources or outside contractors are trying to do that. Driving around town, seeing people struggle with it. I've asked for some volunteers from the various sports organizations. We've got an assembled list of a few folks that need some help. So I reach out to that group, and anybody that would be interested in helping, ask you to consider reaching out to us or the town manager. We can give you some locations that might need some assistance. And I will also tell you as a last point that you know, we've had calls from residents, some disabled veterans, some disabled individuals who have difficulty getting around town because of disabilities, who have expressed frustration, which we get every year, of course. But I would ask our residents who are particularly in the high traffic walking areas. I've seen a lot of residents having to walk on streets because they'll get themselves landlocked going down a sidewalk and find themselves in an area that hasn't been cleared and have to turn around and go back. I realize we've asked a lot of our residents in this storm period because we've had a tremendous amount of snow activity, but urge you to all keep in mind that if you're in that situation to please go the extra distance in light of people who are reliant on public transportation and need your help. So just driving around town, there are some hot spots. The town has done an awful lot. Jeff has led all of our staff in responding to problem areas, but we really need your help on that. So realize that 5 weeks from now, hopefully we'll be looking at grass, but right now we obviously need your help. So thank you in advance for that. Town manager's report.
I have nothing further, but I will ask Peter to come up and give his EDIC report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Town Manager, and councilors. In your packet, I did provide you with a copy of this month's report. It's basically an expanded version of my comments made at the State of the Town breakfast, in essence, a summary of activity from last year. So I'll be brief, as you all have a copy of the report. But in terms of some of the highlights, in 2014, in terms of new business activity in town, statistically, we had 30 new businesses. By comparison, looking at 2013, we welcomed 21 businesses to town, so that's certainly positive. In terms of businesses that we retained and businesses that expanded in 2014, we had 16 businesses that fit that category in 2014, and by comparison, in 2013, it was only 5 businesses, so that's a pretty significant increase as well. So we're thankful for that. In terms of overall commercial building permit activity, the numbers were pretty consistent with the previous year. This past year, we had $7.8 million in commercial building permit activity, and in 2013, it was $7.4 million. So those numbers are very similar. In terms of the highlights from last year, there were 3 buildings in particular that took a significant amount of activity on that list. 1260 Celestine Highway, Connecticut Multi-Specialty, and Hartford Hospital expanded in that building. The most significant was probably the Goffbrook Shops, Chips Restaurant, built a new building there. Planet Fitness came to town, Romp and Roll, and Buffalo Wild Wings. So Joe Maruzzi, the developer of that center, really should be commended for being as aggressive as he has been in the last couple of years. And then lastly, 100 Great Meadow Road, the office building on the Connecticut River, added VHB, which is an engineering firm, Aon Consulting, Senior Link, and CBS, which is a Xerox company. So his building now is nearing 100% occupancy, so that's also good news for him after a couple of rough years. In terms of new single-family home development in town, last year we had 12 new homes built in town. The previous year it was only 7. So although we have not approved a significant subdivision in a long, long time, people are finding lots here and there to build homes. So there is a pent-up demand for new single-family home construction in town, just so you're aware of that. In terms of progress on our vacant and underutilized properties, as we've discussed, we have a grant that was received last year to help with the redevelopment of 1000 Silas Deane Highway. That should be coming in front of you very shortly in terms of our negotiations with the owner there. We're waiting for the Masonic Hall on Main Street to be redeveloped, and we're hoping that will be this year. And then lastly, if you've been up to Cumberland Avenue, the Craig Magnet School is making significant progress. In terms of the EDIC, they remain very busy. Also, they received some state financing to refund the facade improvement program. We received a $250,000 allotment from our last STEEP grant, so it would allow us to keep that program in business. The commission continues to do some of their other things, the town guide and business directory. If you've seen a copy of that, it's a very nice addition this year. We had the 25th annual Salute to Business, very well attended. And then lastly, they just unveiled a new town business directory on the town website, which has about 400 businesses, local businesses, that have signed up for that. I already mentioned the facade improvement program. In 2014, we funded 4 more projects, and your report has a list of those, so I won't get into those details. Just at this point in time, that particular program has funded 28 projects to the tune of about $700,000 in funding. That $700,000 converts to over $7 million in private investment, so those numbers are being very well spent. I included a list of all the things that the Tourism Commission has been doing this year in terms of promoting the town for visitors, the photo contest, some of their promotional activities, and also some of the newspaper media articles that have been identified as a result of their work. And then looking forward to 2015, as was already mentioned, we're making good progress on the intersection of Main and Church Street, so that plan should be coming through the various boards and commissions within the next few months. Knock on wood, we're hopeful that the bus shelters, when the snow melts, will be installed, so we're very close to seeing that happen. I have a bid item on tonight's agenda for the Heritage Walk, so we're making progress on that as well. And then a couple of other things that you can see in your report. So in summary, I think things were good, very good last year for the town, and we're hopeful that this coming year we'll see some of the more notable projects developed. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have in regards to any of those.
Questions for Peter while he's here? Jeff?
Just, Peter, a couple, well, actually one question that's sort of a tough site at the corner of the Berlin Turnpike and Knott. Now, we got a couple of vacant businesses. They're probably not the most attractive buildings. Is there any activity? Is there any? Some activity.
There is an owner who is attempting to assemble those, similar to the redevelopment plan that we had in mind. He's not experiencing the success that he would like, but ultimately he is remaining hopeful that he can assemble and potentially demolish some of those buildings there and assemble a larger site. So we have been in somewhat constant contact with him, trying to help him promote that. He's been to some of the trade shows to try and promote it, so he's being much more aggressive than we've seen with the previous owners.
Okay, thanks.
Certainly.
Other questions? Peter, I know you've sort of breezed over the business retention, but I just wanted to make the point that I know you have individually spent a lot of time helping residents, not residents, but commercial businesses who were looking at relocation needs, and I think need to be, publicly applauded for that, because I think the rise in that number is not accidental. I think it's reflecting your commitment to help nurture people staying in, and several of those that we have been at openings have mentioned that to me, that you help them personally to find locations. So it really bears appreciation, because those would be locations that would have remained, I think, probably could have been empty, and we just about shifted all of them in town. So, yeah, thank you so much for that.
Thank you. It's becoming harder and harder as now we're running out of space.
Running out of space,
so
which is a
it's,
good problem, but.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, but
Good.
thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for the report.
Steve, did you have something? I saw.
You know what, I was going to ask you one thing about the bus shelters. Is
Yes.
that definitely going to be a springtime project?
Yeah, we held, there was a rush to have some of them installed in the fall, and we specifically asked that they hold off. We had a couple of locations where we were still negotiating with some of the property owners to try and minimize the impact of the location. So I think we're past that. And I just received an email a week or so ago. They're now looking for our money, so I
Okay.
think that's
So
indicative.
spring, summer,
Spring sounds very realistic, and at least the easier ones. There are, I think, a total of 9. There were 2 that were a little more challenging than the others, so I would say the majority of them should be installed once the weather breaks.
Thanks, Deputy. Thank you, Peter. Dolores, anything?
Not from the public, but from all the department heads, we're working on our budgets and had refresher courses on how to enter it in munis.
Very good. Sounds like a fun
I
time.
know, it's important.
Very good. Okay, we're going to move on to council action. We have one resignation and one appointment. Deputy Mayor?
Motion to accept the resignation from the Historic District Commission, Lisa Wurzer, 311 Hartford Avenue. Her term was 3/19/12 to 6/30/2015.
Second?
Questions? Motion is second in front. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Appointment?
And a motion to appoint to the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee Henry Hornat, 39 Collier Road, from 2/17/2015 to 6/30/2017.
Second?
Motion is second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you, Steve. We have no unfinished business. Moving on to 4A, bid purchase of backup battery system for the Wethersfield Emergency 911.
Motion to accept the bid from SAI Systems for an uninterruptible power supply for the Wethersfield Dispatch/911 Center for $29,413.
Second?
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. This was part of the, CNEF budget, and the chief is here if he can answer, if there's any specific questions. But the current backup battery system that takes over in between when there's street power to generator power, and if the generator fails, our existing battery backup systems are limited. So this will give us double the time to either get the generator back online, wait for street power to come back line, or what you'll see in the next month or so is a mobile generator that will be possible to connect to the system to keep it up and running. So we'd recommend the purchase.
Questions about this? Jeff?
Just one question. I don't know if this is, there's a specific skill involved in this, but did we have any guess as to why there was only one bid for it? No?
It went out on the street in our normal bid practices. It's just what we got.
Okay. But the number was in line with what we were expecting?
Yeah, we're a little between this item and the transfer switch for the mobile generator, we're a little bit over in terms of total, but it's consistent with what we anticipated.
What's the shelf life of these? How long do they last?
Couple of years, you just gotta, they come in banks, you can take out banks of them and replace them. So it's
Okay.
kind of a system. And there's a meter that will tell you, once it cuts over how many minutes it would power the system and so forth, depending on load.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second in front of us. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you.
Motion to award bid 2015-16 for the fabrication of Heritage Walk interpretive signs to WS Sign Design Corp. in the amount of $39,320, to be paid $35,000 from Connecticut Humanities Grant and $4,320 from the Preserve America Wayfinding Signs Project account.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you. As Peter mentioned, this is something he's prepared to talk about. So, come on.
Once again, good evening. As was noted in your packet, the primary funding for this project is coming from a grant from Connecticut Humanities. There is a little extra money that we are going to use from our wayfinding signage program. Received 3 bids. We're recommending that the low bidder, WS Sign Design from Springfield, be awarded the bid. They are, I believe, if my numbers are right, $7,000 or thereabouts less than the second, and then the third was another, I think, 10 or 15 above that. So we did check the references, a very qualified firm, done similar work elsewhere, so we're very happy with the references that they provided, and they have, in fact, checked out. The one caveat to make is if you look at the bid number and then you look at the number I'm asking you to award, we added 1 sign to the package from the point in time when we prepared the bid package. The committee felt we needed one additional sign along the way, so we've decided to do that. So we've asked you to award an additional, I think it's $1,115 to the base bid. I'd be happy to answer any other questions. I think in the packet you also had the sign drawings. We thought we would receive a couple more bids. We received 3, but I think we're very happy with the low bid, and it is in line with our original estimate that we put together probably a year and a half ago.
Questions for Peter? What is it? Mike?
Just not any questions, but I want to give my compliments to Peter and the committee. I did sit on a couple of these public hearings and meetings, and Peter and his group got input from a number of concerned residents, to say the least, who were concerned about these wayfinding signs would look like in town. And I think you guys did a great job presenting the information to the public, letting them voice their concerns. You took their concerns and mocked up some good designs for this for these companies to present themselves with. So,
Thank you.
well done.
Thanks, Mike. Good. Okay, we have a motion and a second in front of us. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thanks again, Peter. We have some items in for introduction only, which are in front of you, so we can move to approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 20th.
A motion to approve the minutes of the 20th.
Second.
Motion and a second. Changes, modifications? Anything? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Before we go into executive session, we'll have any other public comment. Anyone wishing to speak again this evening? Gus?
Good evening again, Gus Colantonio, 16 Morrison Avenue. And I guess everybody says what kind of good work public works does. And I have to say that I complain it all the time. On my street, the last storm probably they went up and down at least 12, 13, 14 times. And that doesn't bother me. What it bothers me, and I think probably, they want to go up and down a lot of times so they can get the overtime. But what it bothers me that right now we have a 4 or 5 foot snow bank, and yet, whenever they go by and the sidewalk is already cleaned, I have to clean it again. Now, to put the snow 4 or 5 feet higher over the bank and to put it all the way on the other side or the back of the sidewalk, they gotta be going fast. Okay, I said, and it seems to me that basically it's just on my street or probably in front of my house. I wonder if they have some kind of a direction to say, screw the guy. But anyway, I find that unacceptable because it seems to me that instead of going 14 times up and down, they can go probably half the time and half the speed, and everybody else will be happy. On another issue right here, I was here at the meeting when they presented the intersection of Main Street and Church. And let me offer a few comments. You know, I spent some time reviewing the plans. And here we go. Number one, the intersection should be a 4-way stop. As it is very confusing, and as is stated by many residents. Number two, all the crosswalks should be redesigned, reconfigured. The proposed crosswalk should be as close as possible to the intersection. And the stop signs, guys, should be located before the crosswalks and not in the middle and not before or whatever it is. That's how you design it. You want a stop sign before the crosswalk. Why have the stop sign, you know, after the crosswalk? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Number three, the southwest corner of Church and Main should be revised. Existing parking in front of the pizza place, presently, it intrudes into the lane, or it doesn't really have any protection. As proposed, the curb line is moved far to the east, about 30 feet. It should not be more than 20 feet, Basically, when we design parking stalls, it should be 20 by 9, 20 by 10, or whatever it is. So by going an additional 10 feet, you're doing something that, you're narrowing the main street, and you don't really need it. All proposed lanes should be 12 feet wide, especially on Main Street, where the bicycle trail shares the pavement with the traffic. As it is shown on the plans, the proposed varies from 10 to 11 feet. Why? We have the room. Why make a 10-foot lane? Why make it smaller? So when we have snowstorm like this, we don't have enough room basically to go by. The proposed north edge of pavement on Church Street should not be narrowed. The proposed traffic island should be removed. And it's not really a raised island, I understand. But, to have an island there, a stamp to whatever it is, and narrow everything, here we go again, the intersection. Church Street in that particular area, it's going to be narrower than Church Street normally. Why? We do need more room when you have an intersection. The intersection side distance as you approach Main Street from Church looking side should be investigated. It does not seem to be adequate. Presently, you have to be in the middle of the street before you can really see quite a bit. And I was really disappointed that when I asked about, did you check the intersection side distance? Says, no, we did not. Disappointed. The parking in front of Lucky Lou restaurant seems to be at an angle. The parking right now. The proposed curbing shows to be perpendicular. Which one is it? Right now, it seems to me that the parking is at an angle. That's the way they park. If you put an island there or whatever it is, perpendicular, are you going to change the parking? I don't know. The saw cut on the plan shows to be about 2 feet from the proposed curbing. This is in front. Why? Usually, the bituminous curbing sits on existing pavement. The proposed saw cut should be set 12-inch from the face of the curbing. This will give you a good base to place the curbing, obviously. If you remove it and you're going to try to place the curbing on top of grass or gravel or whatever, it's never going to sit right. It is not clear where the limits of constructions are. Is it proposed to replace the whole intersection? Why are we constructing the driveway on the east side of Main Street? Probably that's, I don't know, low point probably, I don't know. Number 10, in all, the preliminary design needs to be revised based on all the comments received from the public on that particular night. Not from me, this is just suggestion. Very disappointed the town subs out a simple project like this. It is simple, and an engineer could do it with a week or so instead of giving it to him. I have to ask, what does the engineer department do? Or maybe when it is designed by others, and if something goes wrong, at least they have somebody to blame. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak this evening, public comment? Mr. Young?
Good evening again. Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. Just recently, there was an article, a very small article, regarding town to take vote on buying fire truck. Something we don't do in this town. We don't do any of that. We just allow financing and yay across the board up here, and that's the end of it. At least in this town, they ask the citizens to come out and vote. I think that's good. I've been attending also off and on the Charter Revision Commission meeting. And, if you want good people to move to Wethersfield, like everybody keeps saying, you've got to have a good town. You've got to have town with good rules and regulations and something to turn people on. We operate in the 1600s here in Wethersfield. We allow a certain group of people to vote on issues. The rest of the people are left out of the whole issue. When we buy stuff, when we do budgets. I don't see any transparency coming out of the Charter Revision Commission. I don't see any ethics laws. We spent 600, I don't know how many thousands of dollars with ethics problems not long ago. I don't see that commission coming up with anything. We have nepotism in this town. I don't see them resolving that issue either. And of course, citizens need someone in this town to come to when they have a problem. We're not going to get that either out of the Charter Revision Commission. If we get anything, we're going to get a few words changed in the charter. A few small little words, change this, change that, and it's going to be a couple little cosmetics, and that's about all we're going to get out of that Charter Commission. Now, I mentioned a moment ago about where a citizen can go when there's a problem. We don't have an ombudsman. We don't have anybody that the citizen can come and talk to. Only go get a lawyer and sue the town. That's all your options are. And that's costly for both sides. If we look at what we spend on legal fees, I'm sure it's a lot of money every year. Go look at the Board of Education. They always spend a lot of money on legal and other issues as well. But then again, I guess, corrupt Connecticut is the name that we have here. And we're stuck with it. And of course, the new team will fight corruption in the state. Now the feds are coming in, setting up an office in Meriden, close to Hartford, so people can come and visit. Billboards are saying, here's the telephone number, call us, we want to talk. But in this town here, we don't have anybody to talk to. So I guess that will be our avenue going forward. We will be able now to go to the feds and talk to them instead of coming and sitting down and talking to an ombudsman and trying to resolve an issue. It'll be bringing the heavyweight in. It's going to cost a heck of a lot of money or time for our town manager to handle all that stuff. So, you know, everybody's grabbing for a number to go talk to the feds. And it's rightly so. I got my number. So, you know, Mayor, charter revision isn't going to turn out to be anything. I know the whole thing right from day one was stacked against the citizen. We know that. It was stacked against the citizen time before. No change, few cosmetics. But now the feds are in town. And the big question is, why did they come to Connecticut? Why didn't they go to Chicago? That's where the real corruption is. But they came here to visit with us. And I know a number of people that are already making that phone call because they're so mad about how things operate. Thank you very much, Mayor. We'll see you again.
Thank you, Bob.
Good night.
Anyone else wishing to speak? George?
Again, George A. Rue, 956. One of the problems of when you get old is you forget things you wanted to say, you know, and you get a little jog here and there. A couple of points. Gus mentioned snow plows going very fast and spewing snow all over the place. My observation on my street, as I've been out, and I do my own driveway, even notwithstanding that I'm not a kid anymore, but I've got this snow machine that does a pretty good job. And I always kind of watch when the guy comes. I try to be out near the end of the street if he's coming along so he doesn't go by so fast. I think if they would slow down a little, I think that would be beneficial. It might take a little bit longer to do the work, that's real. But we always talk about the safety of the citizens. And the safety of the citizens involves old guys like me that are out trying to clear their driveway, and maybe they shouldn't be there, or maybe there are ways that you might ameliorate some of the problem that they get confronted with. They know they're going to get it done, and then they're blocked in again. So maybe they got to tell these guys to slow down a little. And I think the same might apply to fire hydrants. I see them roaring by, and I mean roaring by. I see trucks going by, plowing at a rate which exceeds what I typically observe cars traveling down Cloverdale Circle on. So if they'd slow down a little, maybe, you know, maybe some of the concerns would go away. I'll still have to clean it out, so it's only a suggestion. Another thing, just Bob, and I had jotted this down even before Bob spoke, citizens need someplace to go. And I had a thought earlier on, and I've been thinking about this, among a lot of other things I think about, but I only speak on a few, is we used to have office hours. And office hours were pretty damn good, I felt. They provided an opportunity to, in an informal way, to sit down and chat. Not necessarily beat you over the head, but go on the presumption that you're dealing with a peer and that you can chat about problems, and hopefully that the people that you're chatting with are astute enough to understand what you're trying to say to them. And it might be something you might want to reconsider again. And I don't want to, I know you've probably got a fair amount to do, but I have always felt that the office hours were a pretty good thing to have. And it's a nice way to say things softly. And if you have to yell at each other, you can yell at each other close to the door. But you have to have people who you're chatting to, citizen to you, who are receptive to listening and not begrudgingly sit and listen. I'm not saying that does happen, but I've seen it happen. So with that, just the thought to think about how to make the town a little bit better, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Jim Clinch, 903 Ridge Road. I take offense to something that Bob just said. I was a member of the Charter Revision Committee, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 years ago, and we worked hard and diligent, and it was open to the public. people could come and offer their comments, and there was no, nothing behind the scenes going on. So I really take offense to it because the people, it was a hard-working committee, and the people, it was many, many hours that we spent on the charter revision. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any other public comment? I'll entertain a motion to go in executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Thank you. Thank you.